I really think this is a first that we've ever seen, that a guy calls a police officer and tells him to bring the guns because he's about to get his gun on.
Buckle up.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Clovis, California.
Throwing targets are lightweight, weatherproof, take thousands of rounds of shooting, and make shooting fun. Pick up a set for your next range trip. The beginning of this one is all kinds of difficult. Officers had received a 911 call about a domestic disturbance this morning of this incident. Come to find out, this couple's having a fight. They were engaged, they're breaking up, and the guy's moving out. The officer said no cause for any action and left. Well, then later that evening, the woman called them and said that the guy was making threats and had guns in the house and had threatened that he was suicidal. And so the officers came and removed 2 firearms from the house. Well, then the guy starts listening in on the police scanners and makes a 911 call that he is going to have a gunfight with cops and he's going back to his old house to have a gunfight with them. And then he's listening in on the scanner as well. So he's actually got a call here from the crisis intervention officer, and they are talking on the phone. Let's listen in. It's weird.
I mean, I'd like this to end nicely, right?
No, you don't understand. It's not going to end nicely. There is going to be... I'm going to get my gun therapy. I haven't had it in 5 years.
You're going to get what?
So, I'm going to do some gunpowder therapy.
You're going to get some gunpowder therapy? Well, nobody wants to do that tonight.
I'm here. So what do you guys want to do? And I'm armed. So, if you want to end this now, fine.
So I'd like you to give up nicely. Huh?
No.
Can you do that for me?
Ma'am.
What's that?
It is not going to happen. You will be getting a phone call from her anything.
Okay. Can you give up nicely, man?
No, sir.
Please.
No, sir. Hey, here's your buddy. Let's get this shit on.
Here's the thing, man. Just come out with...
Gunfire.
Just come out with your hands up.
Just take some gunfire.
Come out with your hands up, okay? Come out with your hands up, man.
Shoot me, son.
No. We don't want to do that. Get out of the car. I'm with you.
I got it. Hold here. Hold. He just
I
fell
got you.
behind the car.
Okay.
Hold.
Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Oh, God! I'm with you.
I got it. Hold here. Hold. He just fell
got
behind
you.
the car.
Okay.
Hold.
Okay. You good?
Yep, we're good.
This is the third officer's badge cam here who actually takes the shots that hit with the pistol. And you're gonna see him get out here and get his hands on his gun. You're gonna see the guy pick up the gun and point it at the officer. This officer is going to fire 19 rounds out of his pistol, run it completely empty, and then reload the gun and get back on top of it. The officer with the rifle fired 11 shots, so 30 shots in total. Although if you go read the news stories that I've linked in the description, this guy was hit, but not fatally. They actually are going to spend about 8 minutes formulating a plan to contact this guy who fell behind the car. They're going to take him into custody, render medical aid to him. He is facing, of course, a cornucopia of charges. Thankfully, in the houses behind and anything like that, no one else was harmed by all that gunfire, and we've got a bunch of stuff to think about today.
Seriously, Mike, I think it's the first time I've ever seen this.
Yeah, that's, again, I would say on our breakdowns, you never know what you're going to get in a shift, and this is a great example of that. Like, well, holy crap.
Officers, hear me on this. One of the first things you really got to think about is you can't get locked into a verbal loop. This officer is just like, will you give up nicely? Will you give up nicely? Will you give up nicely? And I don't think that was a wrong thing the first time, but when it stops working, you got to change tack. You got to step out from behind the badge. Hey man, my name's Jim. What can I do to help you tonight? You know, maybe tomorrow's a better day. How can we, sit and solve this problem tonight that doesn't end up with gunfire? How can I help you? Think about what's going on in your world and those things. Because when you get in these kind of verbal loops, then that just reinforces the perp's decision to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, I'm guessing here, this officer appears to actually be trying to get this guy to end this, resolve this peacefully. However, as you said, John, this verbal loop of, will you give up nicely? Officers, you got to really think about your words. You got to think about the meaning of your words and how they're going to be perceived by another person who's now in a very bad emotional state. He feels like he's losing this relationship. So asking him to give up might not be the best choice of words. Think about something like, hey, how can we work this out? How can we get you the help you need tonight? Something other than give up might have been a better choice of words. But whatever it is you're doing, if you're in a crisis situation, dealing with someone on their worst day, like you want to do almost every day of the job, give a lot of thought to your words and how they might be perceived by someone else. I think maybe different choice of words. And then once that didn't work, let's move on to something else. As John said, step around from behind the badge, show your humanity a little bit. And that may have changed the situation, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this guy wasn't going to be convinced to do anything other than what he did.
Well, and we have a clear thinking, low emotion, non-compliant person, which is the absolute most dangerous person because they are doing what they want to do, not out of high emotion, but because they want to do it. So very difficult. I will say when this officer gets out, he engages and sees what's going on and then does a good job of moving and a good job of not pointing his firearm at his fellow officers. And that takes a good bit of attention, that takes a good bit of training. So I commend this officer for trying to de-escalate the situation as the best he could. And then when he had to move in and act, I think he did a pretty okay job. Although I will say it's kind of weird. He came out left-handed, Mike, and then he's going to come around the other side and transition the handgun to the right side. And I don't know why that is, but people do all kinds of weird stuff in crisis situations.
Well, I know I have trained and trained other people to transition to non-dominant hand during certain situations. If you're rounding a corner and the only way around that corner is, you're leading with your non-dominant hand, if you've practiced it, transition and get a good firing grip on the gun and use your non-dominant hand. You should be able to shoot with both of them, especially if you're a police officer. So that's a thing, although I'm not sure in this case why he would do that. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, John, I know you do want to talk about the rifle handling in this video and discuss the selector switch here that this officer is shooting from inside of his car.
Yeah, you can see him here. He's not quite ready to fire yet, but he does take his rifle off of safe and onto fire. Remember, if I am on the sights, I can off the safe. If I am off the sights, I am on safe. If I am firing this rifle, I take the safety off. When I'm done firing, I put the safety on. The reason that we do that is because this officer is going to get out without firing the rifle. Now, thankfully, he held that rifle out there. It ended up being not a big deal. But a lot of times what will then happen is if he drops that rifle and slings it, like he's using his sling, hallelujah, then that really runs a risk of negligent discharge, especially on an officer with all their duty equipment on their load-bearing vest. So please, put that safety on until you've decided it's time to fire. And that should be part of your training, that as the rifle comes up and you make a decision to fire, that's when the safety comes off and you start firing. And then you put it on when your firing is done. And I know some folks are like, well, that's not how, I was taught by my grandpa out hunting in 1954. But that's how we do it in a modern context that prevents negligent discharges, and that's what we want to do. A small thing, it ended up not being a problem, and I'm grateful he's using his sling. Thank you, Jesus, for an officer using the sling for his rifle and getting it out there and in the fight. I also really like here that this officer moves, that he takes shots from one position and then moves to a second position. As Pat McNamara says, people are pre-programmed to pick up patterns of predictability, and so when you end up in a non-predictable place, it increases your effectiveness. And so good for him for getting some shots to the guy and then moving and getting to a second position and setting up where you can see. That was really good.
A really good use of the vehicle lights as well. This is what I want to see. I want to see every takedown light, every spotlight that you can reach, high beams, and then your red and blues on have kind of a dazzling effect. It's a lot harder for him to see what he's looking at and get effective shots off. If you're using your vehicle lights properly, that vehicle can sit there and get shot at all day long, not a problem. And odds are he's not able to see very far past those lights. So if he's going to shoot anywhere, he's going to shoot at that car. So great thinking to get away from the car and let the car take the rounds instead of you.
Yeah, I think it's a really good part. Something that as a private citizen, I don't think about a whole lot, but obviously as a law enforcement officer, you really want to. I think they communicated pretty well together at this point too. Now, our officer who actually took the pistol rounds here, a couple of things. He's going to come up here and get to this spot too, wants to try to get in there. Now, what are we going to see here is a justification for this shooting, is that the dude gets out of the car, and then I've zoomed it in here, and you can see he jumps out of the car and then points a gun at the officers. I also want to note here what a small target this is. I know we start saying this is about 15 yards, give or take, to this target, and it's not a full value target. If you try to put a bullet through both of those side glass windows, who knows where it's going to go? So really, you have from the shoulders up in the face to get this guy. So that's the kind of marksmanship challenge you want to be up to in the moment, and that's a high standard.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how far the shot is, but it's far enough that the smallest possible target, which is the knuckles of his hands and most of his head's popping up from behind there. And you said it, John. I think some people would say, we'll shoot through the windows. That may or may not hit him. And the first couple of rounds are probably not going to be enough to stop the threat after they pass through that tempered glass. Now, with that said, you notice it could be, it's possible, but it's not, I wouldn't want to bet my life on it, I guess is what I'm saying. You notice the other officer has his rifle. Looks like maybe his trunk was open, like he had to retrieve it from his trunk. I really encourage you as an agency, if you can keep your long guns, your shotgun, your AR, whatever other long guns you have, in the cabin of the vehicle with the officer, because otherwise it's going to be hard for them to get it under stress, under duress, under fire, God forbid. And I really would have liked to see both of these guys with rifles. That would have been the perfect outcome. And I think had this officer had a rifle jumping out of the car with him, the shot would have been exponentially easier.
Allow me also to say here, he empties a full magazine. I don't have a problem with a guy pointing a gun at you. He said he wants to have a gunfight, and you end up with a magazine in him. But I will say that I doubt that the guy was standing there with the gun pointed for that long. So do you actually see a threat, or are you just shooting into the car hoping that you hit something? And I think that in a moment of panic, that's what we tend to do. But remember, misses don't end gunfights, number one. Number two, where are those bullets going to end up? And number three, you are providing a stationary target when you're doing that. So when he drops and moves, you move as well in order to get to a place where you can see him again. You only shoot what you can see as a good, sane, sober, moral, and prudent person.
Yeah, I agree, John. I couldn't see the suspect during that volley of fire, but it sure looks like he was doing a little bit of spray and pray. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't all over the place, but I certainly couldn't shoot that quickly effectively, especially not under duress, as this officer clearly is. I'm trying to pile on this poor guy, but I'm not a huge fan of the reload. That needs to be faster. The reload, just like the selector switch, just like earlier, lowering the pistol when you're running by another officer, all these behaviors need to be so automatic that you don't even remotely think about them. You realize your gun's empty, and the next thing you know, it's full of ammunition because you've reloaded it unconsciously. You're unconsciously competent at that skill. And that's just something you have to train till you can't get it wrong.
And officers do reload enough. They need to be
absolutely
good at it.
Simple drill, as I've said before. Empty magazine, one in the chamber. You draw your gun, you fire it, and you have another round and another magazine. You do a quick magazine, emergency reload, fire that last round. Time yourself doing that until you get it down to under 2 seconds for that entire thing. At which point, I think you're Jedi Master level.
And listen, at the end of the day, these officers got this guy. He didn't end up hurting his ex-fiance. He ended up living through this and fight. He'll face significant outcomes in court. They got him okay. So at the end of things, hear me. Yes, we've given these officers a little bit of guff about a few of the techniques that they were using. But at the end of things, they protected the woman in the house. This man ends up getting the help that he needed. No officer was harmed. So hey, success is an awful great deodorant. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?